Folks, today my conversation is with the one and only Greg Kelser, Special K. Hailing from Henry Ford High School in Detroit to playing at Michigan State University on some of the greatest teams of all time, that I gotta say, my guy anchored down and led, playing with guys like Jay Vincent, Magic Johnson, and winning that national title.
Kelser from behind the backboard.
He then went on to a 6-year career in the NBA, and today has now given nearly 4 decades of his life to broadcasting at a level of excellence, covering the league, Big Ten Network, etc., etc. This guy is way more than basketball, though. And I gotta tell you, listening to the stories of the influence his grandparents, his parents, growing up in a military family, moving more than 10 times throughout his childhood, but then thinking about the core values that were instilled by both his mother and his father, there's no surprise that Greg Kelser has lived the life that he has. He makes an impact every single place he goes, and I'm just really confident that you're gonna enjoy the conversation that we're about to have today. Folks, I've got an incredibly special conversation today. 7 years ago, when our family had the privilege and blessing to move to the great state of Michigan, I started thinking about who were the athletes that I knew of or thought of or could maybe recollect watching at some point in my very young life. And Greg Kelser and Carl Banks were two of the names that I started thinking about when we first landed here in 2017. And I had the absolute privilege to meet Special K a couple years ago, and we get to enjoy each other's company briefly at a couple Pistons games a year. But today, man, we are with Greg Kelser, Special K himself. We've got an incredibly talented, retired professional basketball player and athlete. 40 years, nearly 40 years. I don't want to date my guy. Nearly 40 years in broadcasting. And I would say, I shared this with him before we got started today, but I said, hey, I'm thinking about, as I reflect on how I've observed him in the time here in Michigan, Special K is an absolute inspirer and empowerer of others, men and women alike, young and old. And he is the gentleman that you see here today. He's exactly what you think when you think about Greg Kelser. I'm so thankful you're here.
Manny, it's good to be here, and thanks for having me.
I love it. So, you know that I love to unpack people's childhoods a little bit, because I think like, hey, man, we were all born dreaming incredible dreams, right? And I know there's a couple things that you're really passionate about, and you've had the privilege to live those out. But one of the things that stuck with me the most about your childhood was how many times you moved.
Yeah.
And I just don't know that people really know that story as much as they know this monster that you were at MSU and this incredible broadcasting career that you had after retiring from pro basketball. Can you walk our listeners through from Panama City to Okinawa, Japan, finally resting your feet here in Detroit and then giving your life to service here in Detroit? Can you walk our listeners through that?
Well, Panama City is sort of like a tourist area on the Gulf of Mexico, northwestern panhandle of the state of Florida. And I was born there at Tyndall Air Force Base. My father, who was from Detroit, was stationed there in the late 50s, and he met my mother. They were both very, very young, and they decided to connect, get together, get married, had me at a young age. And, you know, at that time, Florida, Panama City was home. It was all I knew. And, you know, as small as it was in my world, it was extremely large. It seemed like, you know, it was no bigger, greater place. I'm very fortunate because the South and Panama City, certainly no different than the rest of the South, was a very segregated area at that time. So I remember as a youngster, seeing things, experiencing things, but not quite really understanding what it all meant, the separation and things of that nature. But I'm very thankful that I had two parents who, from the very beginning, as far back as I can remember, would always encourage me that I can be what I want, do what I want, as long as I was willing to work hard, sacrifice, and stick with it. I remember the first time leaving Panama City to go visit up north. I went to Boston, Massachusetts, where my mother had some brothers and sisters who had migrated there. So I saw the north, and I saw a little bit of a difference than what I was accustomed to. The next trip I remember that I recall is coming to Detroit, Michigan, where my father's side of the family resided, and that too was different. Detroit was a little more diverse than what I had been accustomed to in the South. But all the while, I was aware. I was being made aware that there was a world outside of my little spot down in the South in Panama City, Florida. I feel very fortunate to have been the son of military parents because it gave me an opportunity at a young age to travel and to see the world and to see and experience different cultures, but more importantly, to learn respect for those other cultures and those differences, and to appreciate everybody's traditions and way of life. That was probably the biggest thing that I could take out of that. So that stayed with me. It stays with me now. I look at people the same. I look at us all, with our strengths, our weaknesses, our fears, our drive, our goals. Everybody pretty much wants the same thing. But I think that in the spirit of cooperation, those things are much easier achieved when we work together, when we come together, and we have empathy for our fellow man. Being in the military really helped me with that because it was the example was consistent through my travels.
I listened to a few conversations with you. Some were kind of old. Some had
Okay, I can believe that.
Some were a little dated.
Uh-huh.
You know what I love though is I've heard you reflect on a consistent message that really stood out to me, because even though my parents were not in the military, my mother and father came to this great country as immigrants, pursuing the American dream. I think the right way, wanting to add value and solve problems in the communities that they would raise their boys in, and be someone of respect and character. I've heard you talk about my mother stressed, my father enforced.
Oh yeah,
and I knew exactly where authority lived, and I knew my place in relationship to it.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because it was just so powerful. It really connected with me.
My mother and father were a team, and I was an only child for 8 years before my middle brother came. And so they let me know early on that there was no dividing them. And if one told me something, I couldn't go to the other, and say, hey, can I do this? Knowing that I'd already been told that I couldn't. That got me in more trouble. So I knew that I could not fleece either one of them. But they were on the same page as far as what they believed was best for me as a child growing up. They had to tell me things that one would hope you would not have to say to children, based on where we were and the circumstances. But I realized that they were doing those things to keep me safe. There were some places I couldn't go. Obviously, there were some things that I couldn't say. But I understood and learned respect for authority, and that would extend beyond, the parameters of my home, on outdoors when I'm around adults. I had to be respectful, and and oftentimes our neighbors were an extension of the authority that I received at home. So I understood that, and there was never any question about it. It's something that I do think is probably lost today. I don't know if it's because, the disconnect in the home. I do believe that there is a tremendous advantage to having both parents in the house.
Yes.
And my being able to see how my dad and my mother worked together and how my dad respected my mother, I don't ever remember hearing them raise their voices at each other. I know they had disagreements because that's human nature.
Yes.
But they didn't do it in front of me. They always, what I always saw was two people that were working together, and theirs was a cooperation. There was no division, not in front of me. I had the same thing with my grandparents on my mother's side. One thing the Air Force, being in the military, did that was unfortunate was that it didn't allow me, through our travels, it didn't really allow me to spend much time in Detroit until I was like 10 or 11, until I was 11 years old. So I didn't really know my father's parents all that well, and they died when I was young. So I missed that. But my mother being right there from Panama City, my grandparents were almost like my parents as well, my mother's parents. I only remember meeting my grandfather on my dad's side maybe twice. And he passed away after a car accident in 1970. I was 13 years old. We had come back to this country from Okinawa, and we were living in Boston. And my grandfather passed away. Actually, I was 12. I hadn't turned 13 yet. It was in the early part of 1970. My grandmother suffered a stroke and passed away in 1967. We were stationed in Okinawa. I was 10 years old, or about to be 10. I think I was 9. My dad had to leave Okinawa to come to Detroit to, bury his mother. So I really have no memory of my grandmother. So that's one of the things that maybe if I had any regrets of our travels and being abroad, it was that I really did not get a chance to spend quality time, or very much time at all, with my father's parents. But my mother's parents are a huge part of my life. And they too, I feel like I walk on their shoulders because they lived in a very segregated part of the country and time in this country where to look back on it and see the things that they achieved raising 8 children and how they were able to do that and eventually command the respect that they had in our small town is absolutely amazing. It's a miracle. But they did it. They did it with great pride. And I know that any success or anything that I've been able to achieve is not only attributable to my parents, but certainly my grandmother and my grandfather.
Where did basketball fit into these worldly travels?
Well, first it was football.
Yes.
Yeah. First it was football because my mother's youngest sibling, her brother, and my Uncle Johnny, when I was probably 7 or 8 years old, he was playing high school football. He's 10 years older than myself. So he was playing high school football. So I would go to his football games and watch him play. And my love for football, which is still in me today, began there. And I wanted to be a football player. I was a skinny little kid, as you might imagine, 6, 7 years old. But I was playing street football with my friends in the neighborhood, and we were busting each other up, tackling and all that stuff. And my mother was always worried that I was going to get hurt. But it was football that I wanted to play. I wanted to follow in my Uncle Johnny's footsteps.
Yeah.
But my dad played basketball in the Air Force, on the Air Force teams. And he would take me to practice with him. So I got a chance to see that up close. And I remember when I first started playing basketball at the age of 8 and 9, I wasn't very good. I had no skills. I really didn't know anything about the game, and neither did my friends. And we used to play that you didn't have to dribble, because none of us could dribble. We'd run with the basketball and, try and shoot the basket and that sort of thing. But sure enough, eventually you start putting it down for a dribble here, a dribble there, a couple of dribbles here, a couple of dribbles there, and it starts to become common to you. This is before the days of basketball camps and individual training and stuff like that. You learn to play the sports that you loved out on the playground with other kids, and you all pretty much grew and improved at the same rate. So it was a lot of fun. But once I started going to practice with my dad and watching his team play, and he was a player coach on the team, the love for basketball really began to take place.
At that age, would you have ever thought that you would have had the life you've had in basketball?
Well,
were you dreaming that, I guess, is what I'm thinking about?
Once I started playing, I would say yes. But I couldn't make up my mind whether it was going to be basketball or football or baseball, because I played baseball too. Whatever season it was, that's what I played. My parents kept me very active in sports. And being in the military, they had these programs readily available for children.
Yes.
The basketball league, the youth baseball league, the football league. They were there. So I was always playing. I loved them all. The thing that made basketball climb above the others was that, I started to grow, started to get a little taller, and it became clear as I got a little older that basketball was probably going to be my best shot at a professional sports career. And that's what I wanted. I dreamed, once I started watching basketball on television, I started watching football first. I can remember games, NFL and AFL football games from the 1960s, 64. I think I remember watching the San Diego Chargers and I don't know, maybe Boston Patriots or something like that play for the championship. Buffalo Bills with Jack Kemp. I remember watching them win back-to-back championships in 64 and 65. I remember the Chiefs losing the first Super Bowl, and that's when I became a Chiefs fan. I don't know if you know it, but I've been a Kansas City Chiefs fan since the middle 60s.
No.
Yeah, I'm very happy with the way things are going right now.
Man,
I would have been messed
right?
up. I would have had to make a decision had the Chiefs and Lions met in the Super Bowl. That would have been pretty that would have been troubling. I wanted so much for the Lions to get there, and I wanted to have that dilemma.
First time I've been uncomfortable around you.
Yeah, but once I started watching professional sports and professional basketball in particular on television, and I remember vividly watching the Boston Celtics with Bill Russell. Seemed like every week it was Boston and Philly going at it. I'm watching Chamberlain and I'm watching Russell, and my mother loved Bill Russell.
Yeah.
Bill Russell and my dad were my greatest inspirations for playing basketball. I knew then I wanted to be a professional basketball player. It was first and foremost in my mind, and no one could tell me that I was not going to be.
Share with our listeners some of your most vivid memories and maybe wins and defeats. Moments that have really carried forward with you in your life from your time playing in high school in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
What a place to play basketball in high school.
Right.
It's Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah. So my dad was he was trying to decide if he was going to retire from the military, from the Air Force, after 20 years of service, or if he would stretch it on out to 30 years. So at the 20-year mark, he was going to be about 38 years old. If he stayed 30 years, he would be 48. So his thinking, two things. He says, when I re-enter civilian life, will I have a better chance of integrating into the workforce at 38 or 48? So he felt like
Wow.
the advantage would be greater at 38. He also looked at what I was doing, and he decided that I needed stability for the first time and the opportunity to stay in a single school for more than 1 or 2 years. Because I had been,
Yes.
3 schools in the 8th grade, 3 schools in the 2nd grade, 1 in Panama City, 2 in San Antonio, Texas, 3 schools in the 8th grade, 1 in Boston, 2 in California, 10 schools in the first 9 years. So he wanted me to have that stability. So he decided to retire from the Air Force in 1973. So he moved his family to Detroit. This is where he and my mother always agreed that they would settle after the Air Force. So that coincided pretty much with me going into the 10th grade. I was in the 9th grade when I got here, so I spent the 9th grade. I went to a school half the year in Oak Park, and I went to another school in Detroit. And then Henry Ford was 10th grade in high school.
Yeah.
And it was perfect timing because I needed to stay there. I didn't need to be hopping around as a high schooler. Not if I was going to play sports, not if I was going to hopefully get a scholarship and that sort of thing. And those were my goals at the time. So we moved about a mile from Henry Ford High School, so we were in that school district, and that's where I ended up going to high school. Didn't know much about Henry Ford, but quickly learned that they had no basketball tradition. They were one of the younger public schools in the city of Detroit, at that time, like 15 years old, so definitely one of the younger high schools. But they did have a really strong football tradition. It was a football school. So when I went there, and I tried out for the basketball team as a 10th grader, because our football coach was also the basketball coach, I didn't get a chance to try out for varsity. That was disappointing. I didn't get a chance to try out for varsity because the 13, 14 players that were on the basketball team, 10 of them were football players also. So I played JV as a 10th grader. I was on the JV team. And
You dominated.
I won't say I dominated, but I was pretty good. But I was the only victim of that decision to have a basketball team made up of football players. There were some other good basketball players.
Yeah.
We had a good JV team, with guys that could have been on the varsity as 10th graders. But I embraced it. I didn't look down on it, and my whole goal was to get to varsity as soon as I can. 10 games into the JV season, I got moved up to varsity. And I remember I sat on the bench as a newly minted varsity player, sat on the bench for the first 3 or 4 games that I worked very, very hard in practice. One of the things I prided myself on was when I got out on the court, work hard, play hard, be coachable. And so that helped me, I think, stand out, and it also helped me elevate so that 4 games after getting moved up to varsity, I was put in the starting lineup, and I started the rest of my career. I gotta let you know that I'm 6 feet 8 inches now, probably weigh about 222 pounds. As a 10th grader at Henry Ford High School, I was 6'2", and I was about 170. So I was a small guy.
Wow.
Playing the forward and center position.
Yeah.
But I could I could rebound really, really well. And so I was put on varsity, and when we got to the state tournament, I was starting on varsity as a 10th grader. And Henry Ford had never won as much as a district championship in the state tournament. Well, we won our first district championship that year, and we got to the regionals where we got bounced out, and we got bounced out by Catholic Central, who had a 6'10" All-American high school player named Tom Lagarde, who was heading to North Carolina. He was 6'10", 220, and I had to guard him at 6'2", 170, 175. Needless to say, he destroyed me, and we didn't win the game. But it was a great learning experience. Even in defeat, it boosted my confidence.
Yes.
And I felt like, okay, I've got 2 more years of varsity basketball. I'm going to grow some more. I'm only 15
Yes.
years old, and I'm going to have a nice high school career. So the disappointment of losing in the regionals and not being able to go further, but also knowing that the school had never gone that far and that I had played a key role in it
Yeah.
was tremendous for me. It was growth, and it was achievement in the midst of the disappointment of not going farther.
What would you say when you think back on those times? I know that I really enjoyed, and I like when you do that smirk because I know how meaningful it is to you. But when you mentioned that it was very clearly Bill Russell and your father that like just cemented this life of basketball in you for you. What was like the impact and influence of your coaches like at the high school level? I ask because the world just, 40 years later, it just,
Yeah.
I'm almost like, what is that today at times when I see coaching? But what was coaching like back then for you, and what impact did it have on you?
Well, the coaches were the authority figures. It was really just like the authority your dad had.
Yes.
The respect that I had for my dad, that extended to the coach because he was in charge. He
That's
was
right.
there for a reason. And I sought to do what he asked me to do, what he was coaching me to do. And my belief was that if I did this, I would get better. And they didn't mind yelling and screaming, and they were very, disciplined, but the coaches were in the building too. The coaches were there as teachers. They were
Yes.
physical education teachers or
Yes.
history teachers or whatever. So they were right there in the building.
Yeah.
They knew what you were doing. They see you in the hallways. They get on you right there,
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't a coach that was coming into the building at 3:30 in the afternoon for practice and then leaving.
That's right.
They were there all the time.
That's right.
So you always felt like you were being observed. You always felt like you had to be on your best behavior. I'm not saying we were perfect kids. No, we weren't. We often made mistakes and everything, but they were right there to get us back in line. They knew what our grades were. I can tell you this. You only needed a C average to be eligible to play high school sports. Have a C, you're eligible. But that was not going down in my house. I was not going to be able to have a C and stay eligible in my household. So, and that was very clear to me. My parents were great in terms of letting me know that they will make whatever sacrifices were necessary for me to play my sports. I
Yes.
wasn't driving yet, so
Yes.
they would get me where I needed to be, get me there
Yes.
on time. They would provide my, the money for my uniforms, my gym shoes, and all this stuff. But my part of it was bring home nothing less than a B.
Yeah. Good.
That was the agreement. There was no compromise.
I love that. When did you know that playing for a program like Michigan State was possible?
Well,
And explain the chuckle, because there's a lot behind that.
I laugh when I think back on these times, and I know how fortunate I have been, how lucky I have been.
Yeah.
You can have all the intelligence, you can have all the right intentions, but you do have to have some luck, some grace mixed in there.
Grace.
Yeah. And I've had a lot. My wife tells me all the time. Yeah. I met my wife at Henry Ford High School. We've been together 49 years.
God bless you, Donna.
Yeah. My wife tells me all the time, she's very spiritual. She tells me all the time, you are blessed. You're favored. And I believe that because I look at some of the things that have happened, and it's nothing but the grace of God. So I'm in the 11th grade, and I get my first letter from a college, and it was Heidelberg College in Ohio.
Yeah.
And my first letter came from Heidelberg, and they were letting me know that they were interested in me and wanted to see if they could gauge my interest in maybe attending Heidelberg. And that was the first letter I received, so I was very excited about it. At least it gave me the first indication that someone knows I'm out here. And
That's right.
yeah. The first big school to recruit me came in the early part of my senior year at Henry Ford, and that was the University of Minnesota. They came, and they were very enthusiastic in their recruitment of me. I went to the school for a visit one weekend in Minneapolis, had a great time, and they made it very clear that they were going to offer me a scholarship. This was in October of 1974, my senior year. Mm-hmm. So I was thrilled about that because Minnesota's in the Big Ten. It's a big school, and I wanted to go to a big school. I wanted to go to a big, powerful conference and see how well I could do. Michigan State had not started recruiting me yet. Here's where the favor, here's where the grace, here's where the blessing comes in. We were invited to play in the Northwestern High School Christmas tournament in the winter of in December of '74. Mm-hmm. Henry Ford, Mumford, Northwestern, and I can't remember the other team, but we were Northwestern's opening opponent in that 4-team tournament. Mm-hmm. Northwestern had a kid named Alan Hardy, who was one of the best players in the country, and everybody was recruiting him. Mm-hmm. Everybody. So we're playing Northwestern, and at their school, and the gym is packed, and there are a lot of college scouts there, tons of them, but they're there to see Alan.
Yeah.
I saw this, and I'm like, this is an opportunity for me. I do well in this game. They're going to see me as well. Well, I had 28 points and 22 or 3 rebounds in that game. We lost the game by 3 or 4 points. It was a very close game. They were favored probably by 10. But I played really well against Allen. Yeah. And the next day, Michigan State was recruiting me. In fact, all the schools that were recruiting him started recruiting me because I'm diving on the floor for loose balls. I'm putting my heart into this. I'm playing the way I always play. But the scouts are there noticing it. So at that point, Michigan State started recruiting me and recruiting me hard. Alan and I became friends, and we decided, with all these schools recruiting the both of us, maybe we should think about going to the same school. We could have a powerhouse. Mm-hmm. So he would go and visit someplace, I would go and visit someplace, and we would compare notes, and we both promised each other we'd go to Michigan State. When the time came to sign, I signed. Alan declined to sign with Michigan State, and he eventually signed with Michigan. Obviously, it damaged our friendship because he didn't tell me he was going to do that. We're friends now. We got by it. But he didn't tell me he was going to do that. I was devastated because I really wanted to play with him. Mm-hmm. Good players want to play with other good players. That's right. I could envision the two of us going to Michigan State and having success and winning championships and that sort of thing. But he, at the 11th hour, decided to go to Michigan. I'm not ashamed to say that whenever we played Michigan, I got to Michigan State and I played right away. Yeah. It was almost like at Michigan, at Henry Ford. I sat on the bench. I came off the bench for 4 games, and then I became a starter on varsity as a 10th grader. Mm-hmm. My freshman year at Michigan State, I came off the bench my first 4 games, and then I became a starter for the rest of my career. Mm-hmm. Allen didn't get that same opportunity at Michigan. He sat on the bench for 2 years. And I wasn't disappointed about it because I was angry. I was still angry. I still had that disappointment that he was supposed to be at Michigan State with me. And he didn't tell me. He just made the decision. Got by it, thankfully. But that's when I knew that Michigan State was a possibility. And even though I was thrilled, my dad was a big Michigan State fan. And he was more enthusiastic about and happy about them recruiting me than I was. And At Michigan State, they saw that because they spent more time with my parents than they did me.
That's right.
They saw that. See, my dad being an Air Force guy, and the coach at Michigan State that time was Gus Ganakis.
That's right. Yeah, that's right before he left. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Gus Ganakis was a military. He was a former World War II. He was a World War II veteran who fought in the Battle of Okinawa, where I started playing basketball. So there was an immediate connection between the two of them.
Yes.
So that was a big plus for Michigan State. My dad's relationship with Coach Ganakis. Coach Ganakis, I don't think he ever saw me play. It was Vernon Payne, his assistant, who came to all my games. Wow. I don't think Coach Ganakis ever saw me play, but he trusted the opinion and he trusted what Coach Payne saw in me, and that was good enough for him. By the same token, I trusted Coach Ganakis because I had never seen Michigan State University. I had never been to East Lansing.
You were right here.
I was right here, but I'd never been there. But at some point, I knew I wanted to play for these gentlemen. They could have been coaching anywhere, but I wanted to play for them. And really, that's how I got to Michigan State. I signed my national letter of intent without ever seeing the university. I told Gus Ganakis, who passed away in, I think, 2019, at the age of 91, something like that. But I told Gus Ganakis, before he passed away, that he is one of the 4 most important men in my life. Number 1, my dad. Number 2, my grandfather on my mother's side. Coach Ganakis. And Coach Heathcote. Those are the 4.
Wow, what a gift, and you got to share that with him. Over 2,000 points later, over 1,000 rebounds later. I mean, you had such a special, I like the fact that Donna said your favorite. But I know you put a lot of hard work and effort into that yourself, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What a collegiate career. What was like the oxygen and energy like to be playing, next to Magic Johnson, Jay Vincent, and others? What was it like?
When I got to Michigan State and Coach Ganakis finally got a chance to see me play and to coach me, he told me that I could be good. He told me that I could be great. See, it goes back to my parents who told me as a youngster, you can be whatever you want.
Yes.
In the face of segregation, when the odds were against achievement in many ways for young black kids. My parents told me and put that in my mind, so I believed it. It was etched in my fiber. Coach Ganakis, that's why I think you always have to be careful of what you say to people. In positions of leadership, you want to put positive seeds in people because when you do that, they then, I think, go on a quest to try and make you right, prove you right. Same thing when you tell somebody they can't do something, especially if you do it when they're impressionable. They believe that, and they, in most cases, will probably prove you right, that they can't do it and they won't do it. They don't do it. So Coach Ganakis told me I could play and that I could be special, but that I also was going to have to work from the bottom up. There was not going to be any immediate elevation. You got to go out and work hard and prove it. When I got to Michigan State, we had a star there named Terry Furlow.
Oh.
Terry was amazing. And what I saw in him was a great determination to be the best. And in order to be the best, he had to work harder than anybody. Yeah. I thought I worked hard. I thought I had great work ethic. When it came to basketball, I didn't mind sacrificing and not hanging out with my buddies and being on the basketball court, working on my game, trying to get better. I learned work ethic from Terry Furlow because he was easily the best player on our team, but he was also the hardest worker. And there were often times when he would stay after practice. Practice might be 2 hours. He would stay after another hour, shooting, working on his ball handling, working on his footwork, going over and above.
Yeah.
And he made me stay with him. He was a senior. I was a freshman. Mm-hmm. He said, "No, young fella." He called me young fella all the time. "No, young fella, we got some work to do. We got some more things to work on." Now, he's 21 years old, but he's a heck of a leader. I'm 18. And I remember saying sometimes, I was living in the dorm. Terry had an apartment. I used to say, "Terry, I got to get out of here to stop serving food in the dorm at 6:30. And he would say to me, "Don't worry about it. I got you." And I go eat with him. Huh. Now, how is that for leadership?
Yes.
But he had me stay, and we would just work and work and work, and then I would go eat with him, then I'd go get my homework done and everything, get ready for the next day. Terry averaged 33 points a game in Big Ten play my freshman year. I saw this. I saw excellence,
yes,
but I also saw what it took.
Yes.
He had a 3-game stretch. And this is before the three-point shot was in basketball at the collegiate level. He had a 3-game stretch of 50 points against Ohio State. 2 days later, 42 points against Ohio State. 4 days later, 48 points against Northwestern. 50, 42, 48. Guy could shoot. I thought every shot he ever took was going in. He was amazing. So I had this to inspire me.
Yes.
And I remember watching him break the all-time scoring record at Michigan State. He did it late in the season, and I took note of that. And they stopped the game, and they gave him the ball, and he got a standing ovation, and I had never seen that live before, and that was really cool.
Yeah.
But I said to myself, I'm going to do that. I'm going to break his record. And that became my goal. So I'm going to break his record. So, but learning work ethic from him, when he left, I didn't forget that. And then that became my challenge and my aspiration to outwork everybody in order to get better. So I got a key to Jennison Fieldhouse where I could go at night, open the door, and go up to our auxiliary gym and work out. And I would make my freshmen come with me. And I would tell them we got stuff to do. I did that for 3 years. It was not uncommon to see me up at Jennison Fieldhouse at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, working on my game. I learned that from Terry.
How interesting that. I mean, first of all, what an incredible story. Second of all, I completely forgot he was walking out as you arrived. Yeah. And you kind of just miss the magic in Terry's story because of all the other wonderful things that happened at Michigan State in that season of time. Mm-hmm.
Well, there was there was a process.
Man, how long did Terry go on and play?
Terry was the 12th player taken in the draft. He was the first round draft pick of the Philadelphia 76ers.
Okay.
He ended up playing 5 years.
Okay.
Sadly, was killed in a car accident when he was 23 years old. 25 years old, I'm sorry. 25 years old, he was killed in a car accident outside of Cleveland, Ohio in May of 1980. It was devastating for all of us who knew him and the Michigan State community. But I never forgot him and the lessons I learned from him. Yeah. Without him, I don't think I have the success that I eventually had at Michigan State. I certainly don't have the success as a freshman because here's a senior that embraced me. In fact, we had like 6 or 7 seniors on that team, and they all embraced me as little brother. Yep. And helped me make that transition and be successful right away in college basketball.
You know, I'm obsessed with this concept of being an advocate to others, and I talk about it everywhere I go. And I know you are one to many people, but now that you've reminded me of Terry, I just want to share it really quick. So there's 4 simple things that I think the most incredible advocates in your life do consistently. Mm-hmm. One, they believe in what you believe just as much as you do, and they remind you about it. Mm-hmm. You got this. Two, anytime you ask for a minute, they give you 5.
Sure.
3, there's many times you don't even know you need them, but they're reaching out. 4, they're spraying flowers and compliments and praying for you in rooms that you'll never know about. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the greatest advocates in my life have shared those characteristics and those traits. And I know that's something that you represent. And it sounds as if Terry was that type of person in your life.
He was that type of person.
Yeah.
He really was.
Yeah.
I remember the very first time I met him, and I was in awe of him, but I didn't want him to know it. I was trying to be cool. But I was at the Kellogg Center at Michigan State. Now I'm already signed to go there. That's a done deal. But I still had the opportunity to take the visit. Mm-hmm. So my parents and my younger brother and myself, we went to East Lansing. This is like 2 weeks after I had signed. So I see Michigan State for the very first time. And I'm staying at the Kellogg Center. My parents, they've got a different room. I'm in this room. And they wanted me to meet Terry. So about 8:30 that morning, Terry comes, knocks on the door. I open it up, and there he is standing there. He's 6'5", but he could have been 7'5". And, just the essence of cool.
Yeah.
He had the nice apple hat on, and, he had the beard with the all that. I didn't have any facial hair. And he looked majestic. And I'm like, okay, but I was trying to be cool.
Yeah.
But I really, really was. And, I was really intimidated. I was really in awe of him. But he came in and we talked. And then we went and had breakfast together. And I could tell then that he liked me.
Yeah.
And he obviously had heard, about me and that I could help and that I could be a good player. And he was letting me know that he was looking forward to having me on the team. Getting acceptance like that from a senior
Yes.
who's heading for the NBA,
Yep.
who has, already shown how good he can be, not only in the Big Ten but in the country. Mm-hmm. But to say, hey, I'm looking forward to having you, on the team and working with you and playing with you, that meant a lot.
You go on and play on one of the greatest teams in Michigan State history, and you're a significant part of the foundation of what made them one of the greatest teams of all time. Fondest memory from that championship season? Fondest memory?
Well, let me go back.
Please.
When I was being recruited by Michigan State, they had this dream that they shared with me. And it was that I signed in 1975. There was a player out of Denby High School named Stuart House, who was like the top 1 or 2 centers in the country. Mm-hmm. And the goal was to sign him. Mm-hmm. And then in 1977, signed Irvin Magic Johnson, who wasn't Magic yet. He was just right. Irvin Johnson. Yeah. That we would win a national championship before I leave Michigan State. That was the dream that they were peddling.
And they were already vision casting that out.
Yes. Well, I bought in when Coach Ganakis was replaced after my first year.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. That's when Michigan State lost Stuart House. He was going to come, but he wanted to play for Coach Ganakis, like I wanted to play for Coach Ganakis. I thought about leaving Michigan State when they relieved Coach Ganakis of his duties. I came very close to leaving because this is the man I came here to play for.
That's right.
Coach Ganakis and my dad convinced me that Michigan State was where I needed to be. And this is after he was let go. He did that. But I will say this. We were very fortunate because while we didn't get Stuart House, we got Jay Benson, who was tremendous. Jay was so good. He was so good. And clearly we got Irvin.
Yeah.
So now we've got the pieces in place. Now let's go see if we can complete this vision that they had. So it was a thrill for me playing with my teammates, Jay and Irvin and Ron Charles and Terry Donnelly and Mike Berkovich and Bob Chapman and all the rest. We were tremendously close. We were driven. Coach Heathcote was the right coach. If we were not going to have Coach Ganakis, I believe we would have won a championship with Coach Ganakis. I definitely do. And many of the players that were there were players that Coach Ganakis had either signed or recruited.
Yeah.
But if we couldn't have Coach Ganakis, then Judd Heathcote was the right guy to push us the rest of the way. And he did it differently, vastly different. They were totally opposite ends of the coaching spectrum in terms of style and ways to motivate. But we made that transition. It wasn't easy, but we made that transition. And Coach Heathcote used to always say, you want to have fun, because we used to tell him, well, we're not having any fun. He said, you want to have fun, win. Fun comes in winning, you know.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to win.
It's a lot of fun to win.
You
he
know,
was
you
right
and I are
about that.
living in Detroit, sitting next to each other at these games right now. It's a tough run, but you know, the blessings are coming too.
The blessings are coming, and you know, I've seen them down and I've seen them climb before.
That's right.
But I'm really, really blessed, though. You mentioned Irvin, and you know, I always have to bring up my other teammates, and especially Jay, who
of course
really kind of played in Irvin's shadow, being from Lansing. But Jay was a tremendous basketball player. But Irvin was a generational player. Mm-hmm. And to have a player like that, to have his career coincide with mine, is truly a blessing. Mm-hmm. The guy, he has the right nickname, Magic, because that's exactly what he brings. He brings a magical ambiance to everything. Mm-hmm. And I had such a fun time playing with him for those 2 years, and we won big, and we had a great time doing it.
Yes.
You know, people used to say, well, you know, he made you better. And I used to take exception to that, because I looked at the numbers, and the numbers would suggest I was better before he got there. Because as a sophomore, I was 22 points a game and 11 rebounds a game.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay?
Yeah, you don't get to 2,000 and 1,000, be the first player in Big Ten history to do that. Only player in MSU history. Yeah. You don't get there with someone else's help necessarily. Yeah.
So when he came, he and Jay came, obviously. Now, you know, his help and numbers go down a little bit. 22 points a game becomes 18, and 11 rebounds a game becomes 9.
Yes.
But they're getting 17 and 8 and that sort of thing, and we're a much better team. So what Irvin brought was the winning. You know, the 22 and 12 was, or 22 and 11 was on a 500 team. Irvin comes and, you know, we're winning 90% of our games. Yes. So in essence, he really did make me better. Mm-hmm. He made me better, more effective. Mm-hmm. And it took me seeing what he did when he got to the Lakers, what he did for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who was 10 years in the league, had been an MVP like 4 or 5 times. He made Kareem better. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily saying that Kareem, you know, he made a skyhook better. No, he made him better in terms of he was able to get the ball to him at the right time better. He was able to take some wear and tear off of Kareem's body because, you know, running up and down the court, showtime, and Kareem sometimes didn't have to go down court because they're scoring on the fast break.
Yeah, that's right.
He extended his career, got him another 10 years. Kareem played 20 years. He doesn't get the 20 years if he's, you know, trudging up and down the court like before Irvin got there to L.A. So I don't mind it now when people say, well, he made you better. Yeah, he made me better. Made me a winner, made me a champion. I embrace that, and I'm thankful that he made me better.
Yeah. Special K. Do you remember draft night?
I do.
You remember that in 1979?
I do.
Man, I mean, I think about, you know, I've become close with a young man by the name of Anthony Pittman on the Lions. Mm-hmm. You know Anthony. Mm-hmm. We've been to a couple of games together, and, you know, I just love the story. Born in Detroit, goes to high school here, goes to college here, plays for the Lions. And I think of your story, of all the people I know there are not that many people with kind of like a similar just story where it's like just so fascinating and magical.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember draft. It wasn't draft night, it was draft day.
Oh yeah, tell us about that, because I reminded you I was 1 at that time.
So it wasn't the production that it is now. Back in 1979, the NBA it was held in the daytime in New York City, and that year it was on June 25th, which is Donna's birthday. And ironically, Donna's birthday is also my grandmother's birthday. Donna and my grandmother, they share a birthday, June 25th. So I'm in New York. What the NBA did at that time was invite the top 10 anticipated players to New York for the draft. So I was in attendance in Irvin. We were prideful because we were the only 2 teammates there. Mm-hmm. But we were projected to go in the top 10. Irvin and we were projected to go in the top 5. Bill Cartwright was there, center out of San Francisco.
Yeah.
David Greenwood was there. He was a forward from UCLA. Sidney Moncrief was there from the University of Arkansas. James Bailey was there from Rutgers. Calvin Natt out of Louisiana was there. I think that was it. It was like 7 or 8 of us. Mm-hmm. And the commissioner at the time, Lawrence O'Brien. So I remember thinking, we all knew Irvin was going first to the Lakers. That was no secret. There was some uncertainty about who was going second. I had spoken with the Chicago Bulls, who had the second pick. They had interviewed me, and there was a chance that I might go second, and that was going to be really cool. Teammates going 1 and 2. New York had the 3rd pick, and I'd been interviewed by the Knicks, so there was a chance that might happen. Milwaukee had the 4th pick, and the Pistons had the 5th pick. Well, the night before, I got word that Milwaukee and Detroit had swapped picks, and that if I were still there, then the Pistons were going to select me. So that was exciting, but I really wanted to go second or third.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, Chicago took David Greenwood.
That's right.
And New York took Bill Cartwright. And then I went 4th to Milwaukee, and then Milwaukee. I went 4th to Detroit after they made the swap, and Sidney Moncrief went to Milwaukee. So that was exciting. It was fun. It was a dream come true for all of us. Now we're NBA players. Now we have realized that portion of our dream.
Yes.
But soon after, obviously the realization set in that, okay, now you got to go prove yourself all over again.
So many people know the story of your professional career, and I know that, like many others, and one of my dearest friends, Paul Davis, who you share a lot of history with,
Mm-hmm.
Having played 20 years after you at the great Michigan State for Coach Tom Izzo. You share a similar journey with basketball as it relates to injuries and knees and sadly the time running out on your career. When you think about those 305 NBA games, how would you summarize and describe your career?
Well, it's bittersweet in a way because I was accustomed to having tremendous success as a basketball player wherever I played. I remember my first year playing organized basketball, Okinawa, playing for the Bobcats in the Fort Buckner Youth Activities League, and our team going undefeated. We were 10-0, and I was the most valuable player in the division, in the elementary division. I played in the elementary division. There was a junior division and a senior division. Success and winning and being the best player. At Henry Ford, taking a program that was not known for basketball, getting them to the regionals, becoming one of the best players in the state and one of the best high school players in the country. Starting low, climbing high. Same thing at Michigan State. Starting low, climbing high. I was anticipating doing the same thing in the NBA. I went to the Detroit Pistons, not a very good team, had only won 30 games. My goal was to try to do the same thing. I had individual success as a rookie, 14 points a game, 5-6 rebounds a game, second team all-rookie. My second year, I started off individually really, really well. 22 points a game after my first 10 games my second year in the NBA. Manny, when I took the court, I felt like nobody could stop me. Mm-hmm. And a lot of players feel that way. You know, you get to that level,
yes,
you can play.
Yes.
You can play. And I felt unstoppable. I felt that one of the things I think when you're a young player, you want to win, but I think the most immediate thing is to show that you belong. Mm-hmm. And so you feel, you think about it more in individual terms of, I got to show that I can play and that I can play at this level. Mm-hmm. And while we didn't win a lot my first couple of years in the league, I was definitely demonstrating that I can play and I can achieve at a high level. It was after the 10th or 12th game when I started having the knee problems. And
wow.
But the thinking then is so different than it is right now, because if it were right now and I was having the knee issues I was having, they would have sat me down. I would have gotten necessary medical attention and treatment and rehab, and they would have brought me back when I was ready to play. Back then, if you could walk, you played. And I remember many times going out there on one leg, trying to play 7, 8 minutes or something like that, and then come out. I mean, that 22-point average down to 18, down to 16, down to 14, down to 12, until they finally said, okay, and so I went and had surgery. But that was really the beginning of the end of my professional basketball experience. I'm thankful that I was able to play 4 more years, and I could have even gone on farther. It was really up to me. I made a conscious decision. Now, if I had been after my fifth season, if I had been offered the contract that I was seeking, I would have probably continued to play. But by then, my knee was so messed up, I was having to take medication and do all kinds of things to get out there on the floor that I wasn't really sure about. As a 27-year-old, you do these things, but in the back of your head, you're thinking, what am I doing to myself long term?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What am I doing? And sadly, for my family and I watched my dad. My dad was diagnosed with lung cancer when I was in Seattle playing with the Sonics. I was 25 years old, and my dad was 46, and he was diagnosed with lung cancer. And he survived 16 months after that diagnosis. And I watched him, just go down, wow. the disease, the deterioration and all of that. I watched him courageously fight this battle that he had little chance of overcoming long term. But he did it very courageously, but he's 46, 40. He passed away at 48. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? Am I putting myself in a position, for, long-term damage, trying to stay out on the basketball court? Mm-hmm. Again, if they had paid me the way I felt I deserved, I would have done what I needed to do. But when that didn't happen, I got all kind of offers from overseas for more money than I was making here in the NBA. But I made the decision as a 27-year-old that I was probably only going to play basketball for another 3-4 years anyway.
Yes.
But I got hopefully a long life after basketball.
Yeah.
And I made a conscious decision to begin working on my next career. So It is with no regrets. I played hard. I got hurt playing hard, giving my all. And my feeling is that the game of basketball, while we all love it, it owes you nothing. It owes no one anything. Mm-hmm. And I got out of it more than most. I got the enjoyment as a youngster. I got the competition. I got the opportunity to relieve my parents of the financial burden of putting me in college by getting a scholarship through basketball. I got a chance to play professional basketball, to begin building a decent financial foundation through being a professional athlete. I really got way more than I could have ever imagined. I would say, and then to be able to step into the broadcasting realm and do this now for, as you said, almost 40 years, man, the game has been tremendous to me. I'm so thankful. I wish I could have, I really wish I could have had the longevity, maybe play 10, 12, 15 years in the NBA, win some championships and stuff like that. But that wasn't in the cards. But it still worked out tremendously well. And, from this platform that I have as a broadcaster, I've been able to affect the lives of others and still be a positive contributor to society and mankind.
Yes, I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking about, and I'm glad that you paused there. I mean, it's, in my mind, from attending the games, watching the games on TV, listening to the games, the contributions that are made through incredible broadcasting is every bit a part of what we enjoy about the art of competition. Mm-hmm. And, when they're no good, you don't enjoy the game as much as when someone really commits to a life of excellence in what they do. And you talk about that transition from on the court to on the court, but just with a microphone and a headset and in this new responsibility you have. I mean, you've brought a level of excellence to that for almost 40 years now.
Yeah. I've had some good mentors.
Say more.
I got into broadcasting because there was if I go back to the first game of the NCAA tournament in 1979, we were playing Lamar University in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And after the game, we won the game, and after the game, I'm addressing the media. And I noticed a gentleman in the back of the room. His face is familiar to me, but I'd never met him before. His name is Charlie Neal. So Charlie was a local sports anchor here in Detroit, Channel 2, and he was assigned to cover the tournament that weekend. So, and he was an African-American gentleman. There weren't a lot of African-Americans doing local television at that time. So I recognized him in the back of the room. And as soon as the press conference was over, I went back there, sought him out, and I introduced myself to him. And I said to him, I really admire your work. I see you all the time when I'm home. I said, so I just wanted to, say hello, introduce myself. And in this booming, deep voice, Charlie says, well, I appreciate that, and enjoyed your game, enjoyed watching you play. And when he extended his hand out to shake mine, he had like 3 really nice bracelets on, 3 beautiful silver bracelets. I'm sorry, he had maybe like 5 of them on, 5 of them. And when he stuck his hand out, I said, oh, wow, those bracelets are really nice. I love bracelets. So he goes, yeah, I wear bracelets because, in my work I have to wear a tie a lot, so I don't wear a necklace, so I just wear bracelets. My immediate thing was, wow, can I have one? So he says to me, he goes, I tell you what, you guys win the national championship, I'll give you 2 of them. Now, we still needed to win 4 more games. That's the only time I've ever done that. The only time I've ever done that, up until I met you and I saw your Rolex. And I said, oh, wow, that's nice. I want to buy that from you. You remember?
Chuckling, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was the best. And then I wore a different watch one day, and he's like, I saw that.
Hey.
Well, we sit next to each other though, too, right?
So we go on and we win our national championship, and in the euphoria and the excitement of all that, it dawns on me that I got 2 bracelets coming. So when I get back to Detroit, eventually I run into Charlie, and he gave me 2 bracelets. He let me pick the 2 I wanted, and I kept them for a long, long time. But from that came a friendship and then a mentorship. He taught me a lot about broadcasting, and he helped me to decide what I wanted to do after basketball. That's why I say you just never know. You just never know who you're going to meet and what opportunities are going to come about. The biggest thing is just be prepared, be open. I tell youngsters all the time, don't be shy. Talk to people, get to know people, because you never know who's going to be the leader or the guide to, whatever it is you might want to do. So, that's how I got into broadcasting. I started laying the groundwork while I was still playing professionally. So that gave me some confidence, maybe the confidence I needed to walk away from the game when I did. Yeah. Had it not been for that, had I not prepared myself for something else, then maybe I would not have been as steadfast, in terms of not accepting anything to continue playing. I can do something else.
Mm-hmm. I know that we've been up on time, but I wanted to, if you have 5 more minutes.
I got all the time you need.
I want to touch on 2 other items that I really wanted to discuss with you.
Okay.
I know through observation and through mutual relationships that we have in life that you are a man of tremendous character and someone who I would say is an advocate for just humanity. You said something to me as you came in today, and it reminded me that I wanted to talk to you about how you see the world today. Mm-hmm. And I think it's cool that it's during Black History Month, but like I told our head of marketing and strategy like 2 months ago, I said, Tony, I said, hey, I'm not Black. Black History Month's a big deal to me. Mm-hmm. But, I think about that year round. Yeah. We've become such a hallmark country. It's like, oh, it's only a day, or it's only a week, or it's only a month. It's like, what? Everything is just so strategically commercialized, sadly. Mm-hmm. You said, I am disturbed by the division and some of the differences that I see in the world. Can you unpack that?
Well, I don't like what I see when people position themselves in a certain camp and stay there, regardless of what the circumstances and the images might be. I think we all know right from wrong. But I think all too easily now we're willing to forget that and compromise that because we bought into a certain ideology and we put ourselves in a box. And we're willing to compromise to stand that ground. If I know that someone is preaching something that's obviously wrong and goes against, the very fiber of what's right, what's proper, what's humane, then even if this is someone or a party or whatever that I might support, I can't support that. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you espouse, I can't support you. Mm-hmm. Regardless of your party affiliation, right is right and wrong is wrong. Mm-hmm. There are no other ways about it. And I think that, it's almost like territorial now. And the things that once mattered mm-hmm. are being, people are willing to look the other way mm-hmm. in favor of standing your ground and not backing down because this is my party, this is my guy. Mm-hmm. I've never seen us so divided in this country. It's disappointing to me that we fail to see the bigger picture and that we are all in this together. I remember in 2001, the 9/11 attacks, and we were able to put politics and differences aside because we had to come together now mm-hmm. as a country mm-hmm. for each other, mm-hmm. okay? Almost 20 years later, we couldn't do that. We couldn't do that in 2020 when a pandemic was threatening the very lives of all of us. Mm-hmm. That got politicized. Mm-hmm. And there was a heavy toll that was paid because of it. Had we come together on that, that was, to me, was as great an enemy as the people who perpetrated the attacks in 2001.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay? We came together on that, but we couldn't come together on the pandemic. And as a result, it wreaked havoc in a manner in which I don't think it ever had to if we had just mm-hmm. been unified in our goal to eradicate it. Mm-hmm. Everything seems to get politicized now. Everything. And it's happening at the detriment of society, our country, and mankind. And I think it's weakening. We might not think it is, but I think it's weakening us. And it's leaving us as a country, it's leaving us vulnerable. And I think that we need to step back and do a reassessment. I still believe that we can live together. I still believe that we can be assets to each other. All we got to do is communicate and, put our weapons down, put our ammunition down, put our guard down, and listen. Listen.
That's right. Yeah.
So, I'm hopeful. I remain optimistic. I'm always encouraged when I see people, especially people of great means, who could easily turn a blind eye and go ahead and live in your world and of grandiose and material accumulation. But I love the people who will use their platform, use their energy and their assets and their position to try to help others. Because you know what? You're only there by grace. That's right. You could be the person, the homeless person. You could be, so you don't look down on anybody. You always try to help others. And my wife, 3 great women in my life, my grandmother, my mother, and my wife have all taught me the importance of giving. Mm-hmm. And the thing I find, Manny, the more you give, somehow, amazingly, the more you get.
Last topic before we go.
Yeah.
Earl Curitan, mutual friend of ours. Mm-hmm. I wanted to see if I could share a story and then you could share a story.
Okay.
That our listeners might enjoy hearing.
Okay.
So most folks know, born and raised in Chicago. I'm 15 years into my career in financial services, obsessed about being an incredible financial advocate to people's dreams and priorities. Mm-hmm. I get this incredible call kind of out of nowhere saying, what do you think about Detroit? And I'm like, man, I'm a diehard Chicago Bears fan, Chicago White Sox fan, Chicago Bulls fan, and Chicago Blackhawks fan. Mm-hmm. And you're going to send me to Detroit? That's like my arch nemesis city. I was like, I've never even been to Detroit in my life. Mm-hmm. I'm 38 years old, and you're saying, what do you think about going to Detroit? That aside, what a privilege and a gift it's been for our family to be able to be here in Michigan for the last 7 years together with you all. Mm-hmm. And I get to Michigan, and I'm like, well, I have no family. I have no friends. And I don't even know of this town, Southfield, where our office is, where I'm moving to. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I do know is I know that the city of Detroit loves its sports teams.
Yes, indeed.
So I'm going to buy a bunch of tickets. Mm-hmm. So I started signing up for tickets with the Red Wings, with the Lions, mm-hmm. and sure enough, with the Pistons.
Yes.
The very first family event that Samantha and I take Avon Atlas to was the Pistons event at the Detroit Zoo.
Okay.
And I think, I like brief conversation, but I probably wouldn't sit at an event and talk to one person for an hour. Mm-hmm. It's like, hello, the pleasantry, especially if it's an event, mm-hmm. right? And you just kind of keep moving and you're respectful that they probably want to see certain people. So you just kind of keep things going. We walk into the zoo and the first person we meet is Earl.
Yeah.
We spent over an hour with Earl and probably 20 minutes in the zoo that day. And he was the kindest, most gracious, mm-hmm. most thoughtful human that I had met in Detroit to that point. Mm-hmm. The way he hugged my children, he held my wife's hand as he met her and welcomed her to Michigan. At that time, Samantha was telling everybody this story of having moved to Michigan. Mm-hmm. And he asked so many questions, and I thought, who is this person?
Yeah.
That is here working mm-hmm. and is just giving this level of authentic care and almost nurture that we really desperately wanted at that time, because we just knew no one. Mm-hmm. And he was the first. And it was such a gift. And then every single Pistons game since then, it was just a gift. Mm-hmm. And I, until we heard the tragic news, and he was supposed to be on the podcast on Valentine's Day.
Oh, really? Wow.
So Earl was scheduled for Valentine's Day mm-hmm. to be on the podcast. Every game, Samantha would say, let's go say hi to Earl. Mm-hmm. Because that's the impact he had on a family that, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah. That's Earl. And you could not have met a better ambassador coming into this city, because he is Detroit through and through and through and through. I remember Earl and I, we were 15 years old. This was the summer of 1973. So we hadn't turned 16 yet. Earl is 2 weeks older than I am. He's September 3rd, I'm September 17th. We were born in 1957. So we're 15 years old, and we meet at Northwestern High School because we're trying out for the Detroit youth team that was to travel to play in the National Youth Games, and that summer they were going to be held in Birmingham, Alabama. So it's Earl, it's me, and it's about 15 other guys. And George Gaddy, who was the youth coach at that time, we had 2 weeks to try out for this team. It was only going to take 10 guys. It's like 15, 16 guys trying out. Now, again, I'm like 6'2", 6'3" now. Earl's about 6'2". And no, I wasn't 6'3". I'm still 15. I'm 16. Maybe about 6'2", 6'3". So we try out every day. I remember taking the bus. I had to take the bus from where I lived near 8 Mile and Lasser down to Northwestern. Everybody was taking the bus. Nobody had a driver's license yet. And I remember we all worked very hard, and I met Earl, and we hit it off, and I ended up making the team. Earl did not make the team. He should have made the team. I always felt like he should have made the team. But our coach, George Gaddy, elected to take 2 football players. One was Ron Simpkins, who played at the University of Michigan as a middle linebacker, but he was a good basketball player too. The other, and Ron ended up playing with the Cincinnati Bengals. Curtis Greer, who also played at the University of Michigan and ended up playing with the St. Louis Cardinals football team. He had those guys on the team. And then, a bunch of other guys, but Earl should have made the team, but Earl didn't make the team. But we stayed in touch. That started a friendship. We were 15 years old. We stayed in touch all those years. Earl went to Finney High School. I'm at Henry Ford. We played them. And it was funny because Earl's teammate, a guy named Dave Cochran, his teammate at Finney High School, made the team, and I roomed with Earl Cochran in Birmingham. It's crazy. But Earl and I stayed in touch, and just for some crazy reason, we always cheered for each other. So I remember being real happy when, he would have success at Finney.
Yes.
He would feel the same way when I had success at Henry Ford. I remember when he went off to Robert Morris to college and then came back to University of Detroit, was having success. I was happy. He was happy when I was having success and winning a championship at Michigan State. I remember being thrilled when he was signed, with the 76ers, going to one of the best teams in the league, going to play with Dr. J. And then he won that championship. I mean, it was as if, I had won it. I was that happy for him. And we just always pull for each other. But what you described with Earl, he's a people person, and he's genuine. That is no front.
That's right.
That's who he was. And when I started doing my basketball camps in the summer of 1978, Earl came on board, and he was always great with the kids. And I still do my camps. My camps still run now. It's 40 plus years. Mm-hmm. And Earl has always been right there. He's always made the time. I would tell him, in his role with the Pistons, they have him going everywhere, doing everything.
Right. The face of the team.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, I don't care if you can only come, the camp is 5 days. We run like 4 of them a year. I don't care if you can only be there 2 days, or if you have to come in the morning and leave in the afternoon, or come in the afternoon and leave. I want you there because I wanted his presence and I wanted his impact on the children. Yeah. Earl makes relationships. I mean, there are kids in the camp that who don't have fathers, and Earl has kind of helped and stepped in and been a male role model for them. He'll bring some of those kids to games. He'll go to graduations and things like that. That's who Earl Cureton was. So when word came, he wrote his book. I'd been on him a long time. Man, you got to write this book. I said, your story, you got to share that. The story of perseverance and all this stuff, and how you was able to forge a 12-year NBA career. You got to share that. So he finally got the book done, and I was reading the book, and like after every 2 or 3 chapters, I would call him up, and we'd talk about the stuff he said in the book. So the Wednesday before he passed away on that Sunday, I called him up, and we're laughing about the book, and then that Friday night, he worked the game.
That's right.
And, and that was another thing. Every time I would see him doing those games in place of Rick, I would just get thrilled because I knew he loved doing it. And if Rick wasn't going to be there, hey, let's get Earl. Bring Earl in. That Sunday morning, I had just asked Mark Champion, you working with Earl today? He goes, I'm not sure. Well, I knew Rick wasn't coming, so I'm hoping that Earl's going to be there. And then 15 minutes later, we get that news. And, I had to leave the arena and go out in the back and just compose myself because it was just shocking to me. We've been friends 51 years. Earl is, I'll never forget him. If he was your guy, you knew it.
That's right.
It. Yeah. And, sometimes he would call and I would see his name and I would like, okay, I don't have an hour right now, so I'm gonna have to call Earl back. So I just hit the buttons. I'll call you back.
My man.
But he was just a tremendous guy, and his daughter, Sari, he was so proud of her.
Yep.
She's a Georgetown graduate. She has a master's, and she works at the Capitol now. His companion, Judith, they were a tight-knit threesome, and I feel bad for Judith and Sari. I'm keeping in touch with them. I'll stay right there for anything that they need, because this is a tremendous loss to that family, and certainly to the community and to the basketball family. This is a loss that really can't be measured right now.
I love the way you started your comments and your reflection. I mean, Earl is Detroit through and through, and it was our 7-year run together. That was a gift, and I'm super thankful that Samantha Evanellis were able to get to know him as well. We
were in Chicago last night, and they did a tribute to him right there next to Mark Champion. They had the seat empty. They had some pictures of Earl. They had a basketball there, and they had a rose and a card for the family. So it was a tribute to Earl. That was his space. That was his seat. And they had a Chicago Bulls jersey there because he played with the Bulls.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so they had the Earl Curitan jersey there. And I got that all after the game. I'm going to get it to the family.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But his reach was far. And, everybody is at a deficit right now. I mean, it's surreal even sitting here talking to you about him in the past tense. It's still so fresh, but it speaks to how fragile life is. And, we're only here for a short while, and hopefully we can impact others and inspire others to be better.
Special K, man, it was an absolute gift to have you here today. This is, I think, the longest conversation I've hosted. I love that. I was lost in your stories and your reflections. An incredibly talented, retired professional basketball player who I hear now could have probably played in the NFL. Nearly 40 years of broadcasting excellence, helping us feel as if the game is at our fingertips. And exactly what I knew about you, what I've thought about you before this last hour and a half, and exactly the way I'm walking away from our conversation, just an advocate and empower and inspire of humanity, of young men and women alike, young and old, for that matter. It's a privilege, man.
Manny, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing in the community to uplift and inspire and to build confidence in people. I admire people like you. We need more people like you.
Thank you. That's a gift.
You don't have to do what you do, but you do it.
Yeah. Well, it does. Derek Coleman has told me 100 times since I've gotten to know him. He's like, man, if not us, then who? If not us, then who?
That's a good point.
Appreciate you. Shout out to Donna one last time.
Anytime.
Folks, thanks so much for listening, and thank you to our guest, Special K, Greg Kelser. You can connect with Greg on X, formerly known as Twitter, at GKELSER, GKelser32. If you like what you heard today, please be sure to follow, rate, and review At the Podium. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your shows. And you can follow the show on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. It's @podium_podcast. Hey, if you can, post about the show, tag us. We want to send you some love. And listen, at the end of the day, sharing our stories is what we're absolutely obsessed about. So please share the show with people you love and you care about. Friend to friend is still the best way that we can grow, and we appreciate the support and love from all of you. So hit subscribe and share it with people you care about.